My name is Juha, and I am a product lead at Valohai, MO's platform. And my talk is about batch versus online. So just to get the terminology clear, batch is where your model is delivering value uh, in a batch, like let's say once per day, like just like this mail delivery truck here. It's predictable. It delivers value once per day. And the online inference is more like a service. It, your model is delivering value on demand, and it's kind of like waiting there. Just when you need your pizza, it's gonna deliver it for you. So that's the difference. But I think this terminology is not the best for this talk. I'm actually going to use different terminology, and I'm going to call it delayed versus real time. Uh, Delayed is your classic batch, but also a model that is very slow, something that is not capable of doing real time. And real time is something that has low latency. So most often it's online, but also edge inference is usually real time, but can be also slow. So I think this terminology is much better. And the essence of it is time. So the other is slow and the other is fast. And um, if we look at some kind of common machine learning use cases, they kind of land in the spectrum between delayed and real time. Uh, let's say the weather modeling here, those models are usually super slow. It's not really realistic to think that weather model is real time because it takes hours to kind of simulate. And on the other hand, a chatbot uh, always needs to be a real-time model. Like a chatbot that doesn't respond in few seconds is really a useless chatbot, in my opinion. So in the middle, there's this gray area, and it's the first question you need to have is like, are you in the gray area? Like, is delayed or batch and real time and online, are these like options for you? Are they both realistic options? And if you are in the gray area, then the natural follow-up question is, which one do you pick? And if we look at the kind of the implementation of the inference in edge, which means some kind of IoT device or maybe a mobile app, the inference is quite simple. Like the deployment, the mechanism of deployment is complex for edge, but the actual inference is quite simple. Like because the app and the model they are local, they are in the same device, so it's very simple to do inference once you got it deployed. For online, it's a different story. There's a separation between the model and the app, so basically internet is in between, and you often need some kind of API specific to the model, and the model is served using some kind of like a web server or web service, but still quite simple. Like it's a stateless web service, simple request and response, and that's cool. So for delayed or batch, as it's classically called, there are, in my opinion, there's two different ways to do that. So there's the schedule one, where the model is ran, let's say, once per day or once per week, and it fills a cache, and then the app is using this through, it's using the cache. It's not directly interacting with the model. But there's the other way, which I don't think this even has a technical term, but our customers are using this approach quite a lot. So this is where the model is usually quite slow or quite big, and it's not realistic to do it in real time, but you still want to have this sort of online API. So what you do is you use the ML's platform API, you kind of utilize it for doing the inference. So a good example could be some kind of CT scan for like a medical image that is huge in size. So just the upload could take too much time for it to be real time, but the actual pipeline can be quite complex. And the app actually calls the ML's platform API, and it triggers the inference, and it can also query like intermediate results, and it can finally query the final results. And this is quite common, and it's not really talked too much. It doesn't. I don't think this even has a name, but it's. I think this is quite interesting. It's kind of like a hybrid between a real-time and batch. So if you think about real-time versus this delayed or batch, is real-time actually always better? Like if you just look at the benefits, real-time. I mean, it's real-time. You're using the latest data, and you get some kind of prediction right away, and it's stateless. So like request and response, quite simple setup. It's quite enticing to think that real time is always better if you just look at the benefits. But I think it's not always better. Actually, I think the default should be the batch, the delayed, if you have this choice. And let's look at some arguments for batch or delayed. So specifically for online inference, which is the most common way to do real time, is you often end up with this separation between your production and your development environment. So I've been a software engineer for, I don't know, almost 20 years now. And if I see this kind of setup where my production environment and my development environment is separated, I know there's going to be a lot of pain, because if I can't trust my development environment to match the production, then what can I trust? I can never trust anything. So this is a huge problem, huge red flag. The modern fix for this is a feature store, and I love feature stores. They actually do kind of solve this problem. But I think the fundamental question is, do we actually even need the real-time inference? Like, if I don't need the real-time inference, then I do not need the feature store. That's in my opinion, at least. So in delayed inference, like in the classic batch, your production and development environments are one and the same. And we at Valohai, we call this built-in production. So the same infrastructure, the same platform that you used for training can be used for your inference. And that is really, I think that's really powerful. And some other things that are better for delayed are just the model size and latency problems. Like if you're doing batch inference, your model can be like, it can be anything. Like you don't need to really optimize it for your production. In other hand, if you want your model to be a real-time model, then suddenly you have all these latency requirements, and maybe the model size needs to be kind of capped. Like you need to have this, like, so you always kind of build a separate image for production, and really needs to be aware of the memory requirements and all that sort of thing. Another thing that is different is minimal viable product. So I'm not I don't think anyone should do their production inference on a laptop, but it's possible. So whatever infrastructure you used for training, you can use that for your production if you're doing batch or delayed. whereas for real time, you always need to set up some kind of web service, some kind of server. So the minimal viable product is much simpler for batch or delayed. The deployment mechanism is always much more complicated, or mostly more complicated for real time. So you need to build some kind of image, and you need to deploy it to a cluster which is auto scaling, and you need to have these sort of shadow deployments or canary deployments or all those fancy shiny things. But for delayed or batch, it can be as simple as kind of tagging your model, like this is now my production model. You tag it and that's it. Next time your batch pipeline runs, you're going to use that model instead of the previous model. So there's a lot more simplicity for the batch approach. The monitoring, if your pipeline is scheduled, let's say once per week, you're not gonna worry about it too much. Like it runs, and you look at the logs, and if there's errors, you have time, and you have there's no stress about it. But monitoring a real-time model, that's a completely different story. You need to, it's 24/7. You need to have this you need to have alerts. You get alert fatigue really quick. All problems are like in delayed, the pain is delayed, but for real time, the pain is also real time. So like it's immediate, and you always have to react immediately. So that's a big bonus for batch or delay. And this is kind of the same thing. So margin for error. If you screw up in your batch pipeline, it's kind of fine. You can fix it, and no one will ever know. But if you screw up your real-time inference, it's immediate. The problems are immediate. The pain is immediate. So just like in this picture, if you are the doctor, and the monitoring, or there's some kind of error, people will kind of people will die. But in the delayed inference, it's fine. No one will notice. So the question is, are you in the gray area? And can you delay? Like, is real time versus batch an option for you? And my opinion is you should. If you can delay, you should. Thanks for listening. That was my